She thought she was being taken to a luxury penthouse. Instead, she was locked inside a Gothic fortress with armed guards. As soon as Evelyn arrives at the Moretti estate, the housekeeper gives her one rule: do not leave the master bedroom or the lockdown alarms will trigger. She sold herself to save her brother's life, but as she listens to the rain in her new prison, she realizes the real monster is the man coming home to her.
The sharp crack of a slap murdered the quiet elegance of the Obsidian Club, cutting the smooth jazz dead. Picture this with me. A young waitress stands frozen, a fierce red handprint swelling on her pale cheek. Standing over her is a wealthy heiress whose bank account erased her decency a long time ago. But honestly, nobody in that room looked at her. Every single terrified eye locked onto Dante Moretti, the Mafia boss infamous for making rivals disappear. You and I both know that suffocating feeling right before a storm tears everything apart, right? Yet when Dante finally stood up, he never even reached for a weapon. It leaves us with a grim life lesson to chew on. True terrifying power rarely ever needs a gun to force the entire room to its knees. Let us rewind the tape and look at the young woman caught in the middle of this nightmare. Evelyn Vance pulled nervously at her cheap uniform collar, her small frame shaking from working way too many double shifts. It was not even 8 in the evening, and her tank was empty. Right beside her, the floor manager was sweating bullets through his tailored suit, hissing frantic warnings about Table 4. The Moretti family had arrived. Life teaches us a rather harsh truth in these dark moments. Sometimes merely surviving means learning exactly who you need to be absolutely terrified of. Evelyn felt her stomach drop as a freezing wave of panic flooded her veins. In this corrupt city, nobody needed to watch the news to recognize the violent, heavy-shadowed Dante dragged across the pavement. This underground syndicate ran the city from the dark, and Dante was the man pulling every single bloody string. Evelyn forced herself to swallow the massive lump of panic rising in her throat. She had 0 options left. Her little brother was scheduled for a life-saving surgery in exactly 7 days. It gives us a very bitter reality check about the world. Sometimes the most brutal hits we take in life are the ones we gladly absorb just to keep our loved ones breathing. Gripping a heavy silver tray loaded with crystal water glasses, she mentally checked out. She went into full survival mode, slipping quietly past tables packed with dirty politicians. She held her breath until she stepped into the suffocating pressure zone, rapping. Around Table 4, bracing her soul for a disaster. 3 massive enforcers in dark suits stood like solid brick walls, blocking off the area with a heavy promise of violence. Right in the dead center sat Dante. At 32 years old, he was far more intimidating in person than in any blurry police file. Wearing a tailored charcoal, his dark eyes scanned the room with the terrifying, lazy energy of a predator waiting to strike. Right beside him sat Vanessa, a spoiled heiress dripping in bright red silk, aggressively tapping at her phone and completely ignoring the humans nearby. Here is a major life lesson for us. Building a massive shield of arrogance might make you feel untouchable for a while, but you always figure out way too late just how incredibly empty and alone you really are reside inside that shiny fake fortress. Keeping her chin tucked, Evelyn tried her absolute hardest to turn invisible while setting out the drinks. Dante completely ignored her existence. Slowly tapping a single finger against the mahogany table in a quiet flex of pure underworld energy. But Vanessa? She instantly chose violence. Her tone dripped with unprovoked venom as she loudly complained about the wait. Evelyn forced a tired service smile, whispering a gentle apology while placing the crystal down. Suddenly, Vanessa shrieked at her to freeze, jabbing a painted fingernail at an imaginary smudge on the rim. When Evelyn quietly promised the glass was clean, the heiress totally lost her mind. It highlights a very sad truth about human nature. The people who feel the most pathetic inside are always the ones screaming the loudest. Dropping into panic mode, Evelyn mumbled apologies and reached out to pull the glass back. No chance. Vanessa violently smacked the girl's hand away, screaming at her to just pour the water while throwing nasty comments at Dante. Evelyn's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold on. Odd. Hope, right as she tilted the heavy glass pitcher, Vanessa did the unthinkable. She purposely jerked her elbow backward, slamming it into the waitress's wrist. The pitcher slipped. You and I know exactly how time freezes when a disaster hits. Do we not? The ice water entirely missed the Mafia boss and dumped straight down Vanessa's expensive designer dress. It provides a perfect lesson for all of us. When you go out of your way to ruin another person, the worst of that karma splashes right back into your lap. An ear-piercing screech ripped out of Vanessa's throat. She did not even sound human anymore. Her features morphed into a twisted mask of pure rage as she leaped up, spitting cruel insults at the terrified server. Evelyn did not get half a second to beg for mercy before the strike connected. It was a vicious backhand, loaded with a massive diamond ring that made a sickening crack against the girl's cheekbone. The blow swept Evelyn completely off her feet, dropping her hard onto the freezing marble floor. The silver tray smashed down, the jazz music abruptly stopped, and the wealthy snobs gasped in shock. This proves a very heavy life lesson. Unchecked anger is a wild, consuming fire. It instantly burns down the polite manners of high society to reveal the ugly monsters hiding right in plain sight. Blinding hot pain exploded across Evelyn's face, followed instantly by the nasty metallic taste of fresh blood. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, born purely from the raw physical shock of taking such a brutal hit. Vanessa towered over her like an absolute demon, screaming that the waitress ruined her night. Right then, the spineless floor manager rushed over, pale as chalk. Desperate to kiss up to the heavy mob money, the absolute coward yelled that Evelyn was fired on the spot. While the bruised girl tried desperately to push herself up and explain, Vanessa cranked her hand back for round two. We must remember this hard truth as we walk through life. Standing by like a coward when someone vulnerable is being abused is never a neutral act. Doing nothing is literally holding the weapon yourself. Vanessa hissed about her ruined evening as she swung her hand down for the absolute kill shot. Down on the cold floor, Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut, bracing her broken body for the impact. But the hit never landed. A freezing cold voice sliced right through the chaos, and the entire room completely forgot how to breathe. We have probably figured out by now that the most dangerous person in any room never actually has to raise their voice to command respect. Dante finally made his move. His steady hand locked onto Vanessa's wrist, freezing that heavy diamond ring merely an inch from Evelyn's flinching face. He was not even breaking a sweat, but the furious heiress could not twitch a single muscle. Ignoring her pathetic whining, the underworld king just stared down with terrifying, dead eyes. For the first time all evening, the underworld king actually looked down at the broken server crying by his polished shoes. His dead eyes scanned Evelyn, zeroing in on her shaking shoulders and the fresh trail of blood leaking down her bruised jaw. Suddenly, something heavy shifted in Dante's expression. Let me be clear here. It definitely was not kindness, and it sure was not pity. It was this intense, dark sense of ownership that made the entire room feel like the oxygen vanished. Seeing a notorious mob boss halt violence instead of sparking it, that is a massive red flag. He casually dropped Vanessa's wrist like she was literal garbage. Life teaches us a deeply twisted lesson in moments like this. You have to be incredibly careful when a dangerous hand reaches out to pull you from the fire. Dante leaned in and whispered one single command to the furious heiress. His voice was quiet, but so packed with lethal authority it felt like straight poison. The energy of the room flipped instantly. Vanessa shut down, sinking back into her chair with a humiliated, burning red face. Then the Mafia boss started moving. He stepped around the shattered glass with the smooth energy of a predator, inspecting its next meal, stopping directly in front of trembling Evelyn. The spineless floor manager was literally shaking out of his shoes, spitting out pathetic apologies and promising to throw the bleeding girl outside. Dante slowly turned those terrifying dead eyes toward the man. It presents a crazy irony of life. The pathetic cowards who love punishing weak people are the very first ones to shatter. The manager choked on his own spit, crumbling under the mob boss's terrifying stare. With icy calmness, Dante casually rewrote reality. He told the silent room that he only witnessed a clumsy accident followed by an unprovoked attack. The untouchable confidence of that lie sent freezing shivers down every spine. Then, Dante slowly reached his hand down toward the bleeding waitress. Listen to me closely. This is exactly how a dark, toxic bond takes root. Evelyn stared at his open palm, her brain screaming it was a trap. But looking up, she saw no anger. She only saw a scary, obsessive curiosity. We need to remember this vital life lesson. The worst danger does not always come swinging a heavy weapon. Sometimes, it shows up perfectly disguised as a rescue. Shivering from the shock, the broken young waitress slowly surrendered her tiny, shaking hand into his. Picture this, listeners. The restaurant is a battleground, and Evelyn is simply fighting to breathe. The boss jerks her to her feet, forcing her to meet his gaze, a violent storm of gray and molten gold. Dante steps right into her shadow, his heavy hand gently tilting her bruised chin. A quiet gasp escapes her lips as his thumb tracks the blood running down her neck. Her trauma instantly takes over, spilling desperate apologies while she reaches for the broken glass. Here is a truth you and I should hold on to tonight. Sometimes the deepest scar we carry is our instinct to beg for forgiveness when we are the ones bleeding. Dante refuses to let her crumble. His voice cuts the heavy air, demanding she drop the shards. Slowly, this dark king turns his lethal attention to his date, Vanessa, whose eyes are screaming for an explanation. The harsh overhead lights catch Vanessa, absolutely losing her mind. She is disgusted that a powerful man like Dante would dare touch a broken waitress. Yet Dante does not even spare her a glance. His massive hands are completely steady as he presses a clean linen napkin against the fresh wound on Evelyn's cheek. "Hold it right there," he orders, his tone leaving zero room for debate. Evelyn is hyperventilating now, begging to keep her minimum wage job. He ignores her blind panic, snapping his fingers to demand the check. Vanessa jumps out of her chair, loudly whining about her ruined evening. Dante shuts her down instantly with one freezing stare. The date is over. Enraged, Vanessa aims all her venom straight at the bleeding girl. Pay attention, because life teaches us something vital here. People wearing the thickest armor of arrogance are usually the first to punish anyone who cannot strike back. Let us focus on Dante Moretti for a second. We are going to unpack a masterclass in sheer psychological dominance. Look at the cold, unforgiving glare of the chandelier. Vanessa keeps screaming about her ruined dress, totally blind to the fatal trap she walked right into. She misses the subtle tightening of Dante's jaw as he steps close, looming over her like a heavy shadow. His voice drops into a terrifyingly quiet whisper. He states he will not sit with someone who lacks the basic discipline to treat the vulnerable with respect. But do not be fooled. This is no heroic rescue mission. This is a calculated flex of absolute power. Vanessa threatens to call her wealthy father, and Dante barely blinks. This leaves us with a stark, simple truth to remember tonight. True predators never fear the flames, because they are always the ones holding the matches. Dante turns his back on the shrieking woman, dropping a flawless dismissal that sucks the air out of the room. He locks his dead eyes onto Marcus, the restaurant manager, who is sweating heavily in the tense silence. Marcus wildly stammers, promising to fire the clumsy waitress immediately. Dante completely ignores the pathetic groveling. He simply demands the girl's name, Evelyn Vance. He repeats it out loud, letting the syllables drag across the floor like a dark promise. Then he delivers the ultimate bone-chilling threat. If she is not fully employed by sunrise, he will buy the entire building, burn it to ash, and pave over the memory. Marcus instantly crumbles into a shaking mess. Over in the corner, Evelyn stands perfectly still, paralyzed by fear while clutching her bloody cloth. This moment reveals a harsh but true lesson about human nature. Weak leadership will always fold the second that true, unapologetic power steps into the room. "Get your coat," Dante commands. His low baritone slices straight through the suffocating tension in the room. In a single breath, he strips away her agency. Her shift is completely over. Her cheek requires stitches, and taking the midnight subway is entirely out of the question. Every hidden survival instinct inside Evelyn is begging her to turn and run. She whispers a frantic refusal, her trembling body reading the lethal danger radiating from his broad shoulders. Dante offers her a slow, agonizingly sharp smile, revealing a tiny flash of pure hunting amusement. He steps closer, trapping her inside the heavy scent of cedar and quiet malice. He drops his voice to an intimate hum, asking if she truly prefers the cruelty of her manager or the dark unknown waiting with him. It is a terrifying choice, bringing us to a very real lesson. Your gut intuition is often your final protector when you are backed into a corner by a hungry wolf. Evelyn desperately searches the room with wide, terrified eyes. Vanessa is a blur of toxic hostility, and the manager is melting into the floor from pure cowardice. You and I have probably both stood at this exact terrible crossroads, right? That agonizing moment when you realize every single option is going to hurt. She looks back at Dante, a beautiful apex predator, offering a fragile illusion of shelter. Defeated, she breathes out a whispered surrender. Dante extends his arm. The second her shaking fingers brush against his tailored suit, her fate is entirely sealed. They walk out the door together, the collective shock of the room burning into her spine. She started this miserable shift as a ghost, and she is leaving tethered to a monster. Here is a painful truth about life for us to ponder. Sheer desperation will frequently force us to walk straight into the arms of our own destruction. The heavy door of the luxury car shuts with a suffocating thud. That single sound instantly cuts them off from the chaotic noise of the city streets. Make no mistake tonight. Dante Moretti does not help people. He consumes them whole. "Tell me about the man you are working so hard to save," he murmurs from the deep shadows of the back seat. "Tell me about Leo." Evelyn feels her blood turn straight to ice. She has never spoken her brother's name near this dangerous man. The cabin of the car is clinically perfect and completely isolated. It smells faintly of expensive leather and cold steel. The psychological cage has officially been locked shut. The predator has dragged his exhausted prey into the absolute dark, and the oxygen is rapidly running out. This brings us to a heavy, meaningful lesson. Our personal secrets are often the very last armor we possess, and the powerful will always find a brutal way to steal them. Outside the moving car, the neon city lights blur into bright smears against the dark tinted glass. Evelyn presses her spine flat against the passenger door, desperate to create even a tiny illusion of distance between them. In the agonizing quiet of the vehicle, you can hear the frantic, hollow drumming of her heart. Tell me about Leo. The demand hangs heavy in the freezing air, tearing at her soul worse than the physical strike she took earlier. Leo is her frail, 16-year-old brother, currently fighting leukemia. He is the sole reason she works until her feet literally bleed, burying her own youth beneath a stained apron. Having this dark boss casually invade her only reason for surviving is a massive psychological violation. It forces us to recognize a painful, undeniable truth tonight. Our deepest, most unselfish loves will always be our absolute greatest vulnerabilities in this deeply ruthless world. How? The single word fractures as it escapes her trembling, pale lips. She desperately tries to summon the hollow bravery she uses to survive those endless midnight shifts. Dante does not answer her right away. Notice the cruel, deliberate elegance of his delay. He slowly reaches for a crystal decanter, the amber liquid pouring smoothly in the dim light. He takes a slow drink, intentionally offering her zero comfort or reassurance. Finally, he coldly explains that it is his business to know exactly who serves his meals, especially a girl shaking so violently she can barely balance a tray. Evelyn flushes red with a profound aching shame. She stammers out a weak lie, claiming the intense pressure of the busy restaurant makes her anxious. But life teaches us an unforgiving lesson right here. When you are locked in a room with a true demon, your desperate excuses are nothing more than fragile paper shields ready to burn. No, he corrects her, his deep tone dropping to a devastating velvet caress. In the muted shadows of the moving car, his eyes look totally devoid of a human soul. He casually points out that the manager was nervous, but her scent is thick with a metallic tang of pure, unadulterated desperation. The heavy crystal glass hits the console with an echoing clink. Pure horror washes over Evelyn as she finally realizes this entire night was never a random coincidence. Dante shifts smoothly, crossing a tailored leg in the tight space. He calmly confesses to watching her for 3 agonizing weeks. He recites her physical decay like it is dark poetry. The bruised shadows under her eyes, her rapidly dropping weight, the frantic way she checks her broken phone. He has memorized every single ounce of her suffering. This teaches a truly terrifying lesson. We are never truly invisible to the predators quietly watching us from the dark. Her shaking hand crushes the cracked phone hiding inside her pocket. It is her only lifeline to the sweet boy fading away in a sterile hospital bed. "You are invasive," she spits at him. Her crippling terror suddenly mutates into a tragic, burning flare of defensive rage. Dante just sits there like a statue of unbothered stone. He softly remarks that personal privacy is merely a comforting fairy tale told to keep weak people docile. Then he unleashes the devastating mental dossier. Evelyn Vance, 24 years old, sole guardian to a dying teen, rotting away in a cramped apartment, drowning beneath $80,000 of inescapable medical debt. He drops each fact into the quiet air like a dark judge delivering a final death sentence. Her tragic existence is completely laid bare for him to judge. It reinforces a brutal, enduring lesson for us all. Anger is a totally useless weapon when you lack the actual power to back it up. Watch this final moment carefully with me tonight. You and I are witnessing the absolute surgical destruction of a human soul. Evelyn's fragile reality is completely shattered. Hot tears spill over her eyelashes, stinging the open, bleeding wound on her cheek. "What do you want from me?" she sobs, plighting to know if her profound misery is just some sick game to him. Dante's large hand slips silently inside his tailored jacket. Evelyn flinches hard, her exhausted body bracing for the slice of a blade. Instead, he produces a pristine silk square. He leans forward, his heavy body heat swallowing her trembling frame. But notice the insane psychological detail here. He does render the silk would be to surrender his total dominance. This leaves us with a haunting, quiet truth to ponder as the music fades. True control is rarely about physical violence. It is the terrifying theft of a person's free will. Picture this. Dante sits in the suffocating dark of the limousine, pressing cold silk to Evelyn's injured skin. He traces the bleeding cut with an agonizing, terrifyingly gentle precision. We have seen the possessive boss story before, you and I, but this is a pure masterclass in psychological warfare. He murmurs his last girl was just a kid, but Evelyn? She is different. She asks why she matters, her voice shaking violently. Dante simply breathes that he hates wasted potential. Here is a hard truth for you. The most dangerous monsters do not show their teeth right away. No. They gently tend to your wounds until you completely forget how to run. Just as the toxic warmth of his attention pulls her under, the tires screech. "We are here," he snaps, and the illusion shatters. The heavy limousine glides downward, slipping into the damp concrete of a desolate underground garage. Suddenly, harsh, fluorescent lights flood the interior, brutally shattering the intimate darkness and sending a shockwave through Evelyn. She blinks again at the glare, suffering from sheer emotional whiplash. Dante cuts right through the heavy silence, radiating unapologetic authority. He demands Dr. Aris, the most elite plastic surgeon in the city. She stammers a weak protest, swearing the scratch only needs a cheap bandage. Dante shuts her down instantly. Her face represents his pristine brand. It is a harsh lesson to learn. Real power never actually has to yell. It merely breathes, and the entire room bends to its will. The heavy car door rips open. Watch their faces in this exact moment. Dante holds out his hand, and make no mistake, there is zero sweetness in this gesture. It is a cold, inescapable command. The second her trembling fingers brush against his palm, you can practically hear the iron gates of her life slamming shut. A sickening wave of realization washes over her as she trades the freedom of poverty for a gorgeous, terrifying cage. It serves as a painful reminder. Sometimes we become so absolutely desperate to grab the hand pulling us out of the mud, we completely ignore the predator attached to the arm. They step into an immaculate private clinic that feels more like a billionaire sanctuary than a hospital. As Dante strides through the glass doors, the very air pressure seems to bow. Notice how absolute dominance warps the gravity of a room. Two reception nurses snap to attention, their spines stiffening on primal survival instinct. Dr. Aris practically trips out of his office, his expensive suit failing to mask the raw terror pouring off him. He is panting, paralyzed by the thought that Dante himself might be injured. Dante coldly replies that the blood belongs to her. He presses his heavy palm against Evelyn's spine, the heat burning like a brand through her cheap uniform. He casually orders the surgeon to erase the damage, and just like that, she is pulled into an exam room larger than her apartment. It leaves us with a chilling realization. True authority does not need to throw a single punch. It relies entirely on the silent promise of ruin. We linger in this opulent mahogany room, breathing in a sterile yet wildly expensive scent. For 20 agonizing minutes, Evelyn remains frozen on a plush leather table. The doctor treats her like shattered porcelain, cleaning her wound with shaking precision while whispering desperate apologies. Every time she flinches. But the true nightmare hides in the corner. Dante stands there like a shadow carved from marble. He simply watches her tremble, quietly feeding on her escalating panic. We spend so much of our lives running from loud, explosive anger, but trust me, The quiet ones are the real danger. His dead silence literally suffocates the room. It is a calculated emotional weight, meticulously designed to crush her spirit and keep her anchored to his side forever. Pay close attention to this brutal psychological flex. The doctor hands Evelyn a sleek silver tube of ointment, promising her skin will be flawless in 7 days. When he nervously asks Dante about the bill, the boss pulls an utterly terrifying power move. He casually drops a monumental financial donation to the pediatric ward, but he puts the entire amount squarely under Evelyn's name. She gasps, a fresh wave of panic hitting her as she begs him not to do it. Dante ignores her pleas and sweeps out the door. Back in the suffocating darkness of the car, her fear curdles into a crushing debt. It highlights a heavy truth about life. When a toxic person actively buys your gratitude, they are stealing your soul. They force you to say thank you for the very cage they locked you inside. You almost have to respect the dark genius of his snare. He saved her job, hired a master surgeon, and crowned her with a fake halo of charity. But if you grew up counting pennies, you know sudden kindness is a massive warning sign. Every sweet gesture is a heavy blade dangling by a thread. In a defeated whisper, she gives the driver an address deep in the worst decay of Queens. It is the kind of neighborhood Dante only sees in casualty reports. As the glittering skyline rots into broken brick, Dante remains perfectly still. He radiates the exact same apex predator energy here as he does in his penthouse. They roll up to her miserable building, and the shame nearly chokes her. Bringing absolute wealth into your lowest moment only magnifies how broken you really are. The atmosphere thickens into a brutal collision of two separate realities. We are looking at a rotting brick building, choked by peeling paint and a shattered front door. Drifters on the corner freeze as this million-dollar beast of a car purrs to a halt. Desperate to flee the tension, Evelyn mutters a trembling thanks and reaches for the handle. But Dante drops a low, velvet murmur that instantly freezes the blood in her veins. He turns his head, and a jaundiced street lamp slices his face in half, painting him like a beautiful demon. He says they need to discuss the future. She weakly asks if he means her future. Listen closely, because this is how life breaks you. Our absolute worst nightmares always arrive while we are busy looking the other way. The steel trap final lie snaps. Her fingers claw at the door, but the heavy locks are engaged. Panic rising, she promises to work double shifts, swearing to remain a ghost during his dinners. Dante shatters her rambling with a single, quiet word, her name. He drops the chilling reality that he does not care about the restaurant. He cares about Leo. His voice turns to absolute ice as he recites the agonizing nightmare of her life. Her brother Leo needs surgery by Tuesday, and the treatment costs $25,000. Money she simply does not have. Her entire body shakes violently. She had been begging the universe for a miracle, but remember, miracles rarely show up in tailored suits. The devil, however, is always dressed to kill. She just stares, paralyzed that he knows her deepest secrets. Stick with me here, because you and I are about to witness the ultimate checkmate. Dante leans into the shadows and delivers a plot twist that stops her dead. He already bought the collection agency holding her brother's medical debt. While she poured his whiskey, he purchased the deed to her life. He did not just pay her hits her. He did not just pay her bills. He weaponized her greatest tragedy. She breaks down, crying that she has nothing to offer a man like him. Dante invades her space, the dim amber light, making him look beautifully unhinged. He whispers that she has exactly what he craves: complete anonymity, crushing desperation, and zero power. Here is your midnight lesson. Your deepest vulnerability is always a predator's favorite currency. He forces a heavy, expensive card into her trembling palm. No name on it, just 10 silver digits glowing in the gloom. He lays out his twisted logic as calmly as ordering coffee. His previous girlfriend caused a public scene, and to Dante, looking weak is the ultimate crime. He demands a replacement who understands the assignment of total obedience. Evelyn stares at the card, her brain misfiring from the shock. He murmurs that a car will arrive at 9 to sign contracts. Then he drops the atomic bomb. He will fund her brother's entire treatment. It is a terrifying reality we must all face. The most dangerous deals in our lives are never signed under the threat of a weapon. They are signed the exact moment someone offers to answer our most desperate prayers. The price tag for this miracle is her complete submission. For 1 full year, she becomes his literal property. She must wear what he dictates, go where he points, and obey without a single question. Fighting back nausea, she asks if he is just buying a mistress. Dante lets a dark, jagged laugh slip into the silence. Mistresses are too messy, he breathes. No, he intends for her to be his bride. Before she can process the weight of that word, she is standing alone on the filthy pavement. The limousine glides away, taillights bleeding into the dirty city fog. She grips the card so tightly her palm begins to bleed. When you trade your soul to save someone you love, the world just keeps turning, leaving you entirely alone to pay that agonizing price. The midnight streets are pure chaos, with Heves rattling the cracked windows, but inside Evelyn's mind, an absolute suffocating silence. The word fiancé tastes like broken glass on her tongue. This is not a fairy tale romance, my friends. This is the hostile takeover of a human life. These predators calculate the precise amount of pressure needed to crush a person, and Dante would her perfectly. Trembling, she pushes into her decaying building, breathing in the stale scent of old defeat, dragging her heavy boots up the stairs beneath a flickering bulb. She dreads turning the key to door 3B. Lefty 3B. The painful lesson is clear. Sometimes the heaviest doors we are forced to open do not lead to an escape. They just lock us back inside our own inescapable reality. The key turns in the lock, and a violent cough immediately shatters the quiet. Evelyn drops her worn bag and rushes into the cramped bedroom. There he is, his vulnerability, her little brother Leo. He is 16, yet this sickness has hollowed him out, leaving behind a frail, frightened child. His pale skin barely hides the pulsing veins underneath. The treatment stole his hair, and the illness is chewing through his remaining spirit. He struggles for breath, whispering that she is late. Without hesitation, Evelyn paints on a bright, perfectly false smile, burying her own terror. She sits by his side, spinning a gentle lie about a busy dinner rush. You and I have been there, right? The hardest lesson in love is that we often tell the most beautiful lies to the people we are desperately trying to save. Look closely at this poor kid. He asks her about the tip money, his sunken eyes carrying the quiet panic of a man who knows the end is near. He feels the suffocating weight of those past-due rent notices stacked on their kitchen counter. That mental burden is destroying him faster than his failing lungs. Evelyn does not even flinch. She swears she made great cash, but her gaze drifts to the nightstand. An empty amber pill bottle sits beside a pharmacy slip, demanding $40 she simply does not have. Exhausted, Leo sinks back into his pillows, his chest barely moving. He murmurs that the clinic called earlier today. It is a gut-wrenching moment that reveals a dark, undeniable truth about the world. Sometimes, the quiet cruelty of poverty is a much faster death sentence than the actual disease itself. Leo murmurs about their mom talking to the clinic right before she left. Evelyn freezes. Their mother walked out 6 months ago, breaking under the weight of raising a dying son. When Evelyn gently asks what the doctor said, Leo delivers the fatal blow, The hospital wants to transition him to hospice care. That single word hangs in the stale air like a descending blade. Hospice means the fight is over. Unable to maintain her mask, Evelyn bolts into the tiny kitchen. She cranks the rusty faucet as high as it goes, letting the rushing water drown out the agonizing sound of her own broken sobs. Here is a simple truth. Heartbreak is rarely silent. It is just the frantic, messy noise we make, trying to hide our absolute collapse from the people we cherish the most. $80,000. That is the exact price tag the world placed on a little boy's right to keep breathing. Evelyn, suffocating beneath a mountain of debt, suffocating beneath a mountain of debt. Her trembling fingers open to reveal a heavy, matte black business card. Under the harsh light, those silver numbers gleam like a trap. Dante Moretti is no savior. He is a predator who spends human lives like pocket change. Dialing his number means signing her soul away to the dark. But as she hesitates, another terrible, tearing cough echoes from the bedroom. It cuts through her last shred of doubt. She punches in the numbers, willingly stepping off the edge. We all face this mirror eventually. When the people we love run out of time, strict morality becomes a luxury we simply cannot afford to keep. 1 a.m. The heavy silence shatters the moment she dials those silver digits. Dante answers on the first ring, his tone devoid of human warmth. He was waiting in the dark, fully aware that desperation would break her. Evelyn whispers her surrender. He does not gloat. He simply exudes the cold satisfaction of a hunter hearing a cage snap shut. Stick with me, because this is where everything shifts. The most dangerous bargains are never born from greed. They are born from terrified devotion. He commands her to pack one bag, promising Leo will be in a private medical wing before noon. The transaction is complete. Evelyn has traded away her entire freedom. The lesson is jagged but true. Love is not always a shield. Sometimes it is the exact chain used to secure our own absolute ruin. Let's just sit with this moment. The instant the call disconnects, Evelyn collapses onto the sticky kitchen floor. She just handed her life over to the most ruthless predator in the city. Yet, the instinct to protect our blood is a terrifying force. She is prepared to let this devil drag her into the dark, so long as her brother gets to see another birthday. Fast forward to 9 a.m. The cold reality arrives. There is no elegant limousine waiting. Instead, a heavily armored black sedan idles menacingly at the curb. Silas, an enforcer built like a concrete pillar, tosses her single bag into the trunk. He looks at her, drop up 2 freezing words. Get in. The life lesson here is unforgiving. True sacrifice always begins by violently stripping away your own free will. The morning light filters into an empty bedroom. Leo was taken at dawn by a private medical team funded by Dante. Before he left, Evelyn held the fragile boy tight, swallowing tears to spin a lie about landing a high-paying corporate job. The false words burned like acid in her throat. But honestly, the purest acts of devotion often require the darkest deceptions to keep our loved ones safe. The drive into Manhattan is suffocating. Silas grips the steering wheel, cutting off commuters as if they are mere insects. They finally arrive at Moretti Tower. It is a terrifying, massive spike of tinted glass and dark steel, stabbing into the clouds like a jagged weapon. The lesson here is undeniable. Absolute wealth is frequently just raw, unchecked violence, carefully disguised as towering architecture. This building is a modern fortress built to separate predators from prey. Silas marches her to a concealed elevator using a retinal scan to open the doors. The carriage shoots upward so fast her ears pop. It is a harsh reminder that she is leaving the normal world entirely. The doors open to a freezing penthouse sanctuary. Men who view themselves as gods always build their thrones in the clouds. Massive windows offer a dictatorial view of the tiny city below. The room is aggressively hollow. Sharp chrome, dark leather, and a chill that leaves Evelyn shivering in her thin sweater. Behind a massive slab of black stone sits Dante. We learn a profound truth in places like this. Creating maximum distance between yourself and everyday humanity is the first step toward absolute, unchecked cruelty. Watch the ruthless power dynamic unfolding. Dante is deep into a phone call, firing off angry Italian while ignoring her presence. Without a word, he raises one finger and points toward an empty chair. Evelyn sinks into the freezing leather, burying her trembling hands. This is how you break a spirit. You erase their significance until they feel smaller than dust. Ending the call without a glance, he slides a thick stack of legal documents across the stone. It is an ironclad contract to become his bride. He asks if she brought legal counsel, his voice heavy with mocking sarcasm. He knows she is entirely trapped. The lesson here is terrifying. True power does not simply want to crush you by force. It wants you to pick up the pen and willingly agree to your own total destruction. The room's temperature plummets as he rises, circling the massive desk to tower over her. It is a masterclass in primal intimidation. Evelyn picks up the parchment, nausea rising as she scans the rules of her new cage. She is legally bound to play the flawless, devoted partner. Absolute loyalty is mandated. If she speaks to another man, it requires his consent. You and I might wonder how people fall into these traps, but the reality is grim. Complete psychological dominance is easily disguised within the boring margins of a contract. When she reads the catastrophic penalties for disobedience, the color drains from her face. Dante watches her terror with bored indifference. The lesson is haunting. Evil rarely arrives wearing a monster mask. It wears a tailored suit and calls itself a legally binding agreement. The atmosphere turns venomous as Dante drops his polished mask. His voice goes dangerously quiet. He makes it clear that if she ever crosses him, financial ruin will be the least of her worries. The unspoken threat of violence chokes the room. Evelyn holds back a broken sob, whispering that he effectively owns her. Dante corrects her with zero emotion. Only for 12 months. He masterfully weaponizes her devotion, listing the astronomical costs of Leo's new medical care, the experimental surgeries, the private chemo suite. By acting as the savior, he disguises his tyranny as holy salvation. Leaning in close enough for his cologne to burn her nose, he delivers the final blow. She belongs to him. The life lesson is bleak. Even the purest, most selfless love can be purchased and chained by those holding enough wealth. Let's unpack the deeply twisted psychology playing out right here. Digging deep, Evelyn finds a fractured ounce of courage. Shaking, she demands to know why a billionaire wouldn't simply hire an actress instead of trapping a penniless waitress. His reaction is a terrifying display of pure megalomania. Dante reaches across the desk, his freezing fingers violently latching onto her jaw. He forces her face into the blinding light, his thumb brushing over a fading bruise. His voice drops to a lethal whisper. Paid professionals only know how to pretend. He requires her genuine, suffocating terror and raw hatred to make his sick public performance flawless. Listen to me closely, because this is a truth you must carry with you. The absolute worst monsters in this world are never looking for your love. They just want to consume your fear. You and I both know how cold cash can become a weapon, right? To truly understand a man like Dante, just watch how he claims his territory. He never asks for Evelyn's trembling hand. He simply takes it. Out of the shadows, he produces a heavy emerald-cut diamond, catching the dim room's light like a shattered mirror. In his brutal world, lavish gifts have absolutely nothing to do with romance. They are beautifully forged shackles designed to weigh a soul down. He slides that freezing metal onto her finger, physically pulling her into his orbit to seal his control. Let that be a lesson for us tonight. True love does not begin by demanding your total surrender. He yanks her warm body against his solid chest and whispers his first rule directly into her ear. Look at the absolute terror on Evelyn's face as he constructs an invisible prison right around her. They will never be seen apart in public. He commands, rolling smoothly into rule number 2. She is never to question his authority. He brushes his cold lips against her ear, erasing her entire past with one breath. She is no longer a struggling waitress. She is Evelyn Moretti now, a walking target for the criminal underworld. By warning her that running away guarantees a brutal death from rival families, he becomes both her captor and her only savior. Remember this. Never let anyone convince you that a locked cage is the only safe way to survive. "Welcome to the family," he murmurs into the silence. Suddenly, the steel elevator dings loud. "Dante, we have a problem." The heavy elevator doors violently fly open. A frantic man in a blood-soaked shirt bursts into the dim light, screaming about a rival strike on a Bronx warehouse. Dante's physical control here is truly terrifying. Not a single muscle twitches. His sharp face looks like carved marble, yet the air in the room instantly drops 10 degrees. Instead of looking at the bleeding man, his dark eyes stay obsessively locked on his new wife. With a chilling calmness, he calls for his driver. Notice his complete detachment as he orders Evelyn locked up under heavy guard, offering absolutely zero comfort to ease her panic. It teaches us a harsh truth. You only see a person's true colors in the freezing clarity of absolute chaos. Only then does he finally drop her trembling hand. Dante stares out the high windows, viewing the glowing city below like a doomed chessboard. "The war I told you about," he whispers, fixing his cuffs with a terrifying, mechanical calm. It just started. The long drive to his hidden estate is a masterclass in psychological isolation. Silas steers the heavy armored car through the pitch-black night in absolute silence. In the back seat, Evelyn's shaking fingers twist that massive diamond ring, feeling the cold metal dig deep into her skin. She desperately tries to rationalize this nightmare, convincing herself that trading her freedom for her brother's life was the right move. But blind sacrifice teaches a painful lesson. We jump into the fire to save someone we love, only to realize too late the devastating cost to our soul. As the car pushes north into the foggy valley, the isolation becomes suffocating. Warm lights completely fade out, swallowed by pitch-black woods. They eventually roll up to massive iron gates, 20 feet high and crowned with lethal spikes. After a silent scan, the iron groans open like a waking beast. "Where are we?" Evelyn whispers, her tiny voice lost inside the giant car. Silas simply grunts that it is the fortress. Emerging from the freezing fog, a massive gray stone mansion rises up like a ruthless monument. The architecture itself is a weapon designed to crush any hope. There is a profound truth hiding in this brutal stone. The thicker the walls a person builds to keep the world away, the more terrified they are of losing control on the inside. Let us look closely at this bleak place dragging her into the dark. Despite the grand stone towers, the estate possesses absolutely zero warmth. Blinding security lights violently slice through the thick fog, revealing armed guards patrolling with huge aggressive dogs, straining against tight leashes. Silas barks at her to get inside quickly, claiming the boss refuses to leave her exposed. It is a terrifying display of toxic possession. As Evelyn steps out, the freezing air burns her lungs. Waiting by the giant oak doors is a stiff, older woman, sizing her up like nothing more than incoming inventory. This paints a deeply tragic reality about feeling trapped. The most dangerous prisons we will ever encounter are often disguised as beautiful palaces, designed to slowly break your spirit. Martha stands at attention like the grim warden of a forgotten prison. Dressed in a severe black gown, she coldly announces that Dante expects his new bride in the master suite. Evelyn stammers softly, begging for a simple guest room, clinging to any fading illusion of personal boundaries. Standing at the top of the staircase, Martha stares down with a chilling mix of quiet pity and absolute coldness. "There are no guests here," she states flatly. "You sleep where he sleeps." Evelyn's heart hammers wildly against her ribs as the crushing reality of her lost freedom finally sinks in. Walking past oil paintings of ruthless men, a heavy lesson echoes in the quiet hall. When you agree to play a role in a monster's story, you surrender the pen to write your own ending. The waking nightmare solidifies when Martha leads Evelyn through the massive oak bedroom doors. The warden delivers the house rules with surgical, cold precision. Stay inside. Your meals will be delivered, and stepping out into the hall triggers an automatic security lockdown. Evelyn releases a ragged breath as the heavy metal deadbolt slides into place with a loud, final click. She is entirely locked in. Her terrified eyes slowly scan her beautiful new cage, realizing every detail was designed to make her feel small. A roaring stone fireplace throws violent, flickering shadows across heavy mahogany furniture and dark silk sheets. It teaches us a bitter truth about control. The darkest cells we find ourselves trapped inside are often wrapped in breathtaking luxury, built specifically to force our vulnerability. The scent inside the master bedroom is intensely overwhelming. Sharp cedar, cold rain, and expensive dark tobacco hang heavy in the air, allowing Dante to dominate her senses even when miles away. Pressing her palm against the freezing glass, Evelyn watches armed men pacing the foggy property line. The reality of her role in this tragedy fully anchors into her bones. She is merely a hostage, sitting in the dark, waiting for the predator to return. In a quiet, desperate act of rebellion, she leaves the elegant tray of food completely untouched. Pulling her knees tight to her chest, she simply waits. A painful lesson lives in this quiet moment. True powerlessness is measured entirely by the silent, agonizing hours we spend waiting for the storm to hit. At exactly 2 a.m, the heavy deadbolt finally clicks open. Every inch of Dante's imposing frame screams that he just crawled out of a violent war zone. His dark sleeves are pushed up, and damp hair clings to his forehead. But your eyes are drawn to the horror show on his left arm. A massive dark bloodstain is soaking rapidly through a messy bandage, perfectly matching his split knuckles. He pauses in the doorway, chest heaving, vibrating with the dangerous energy of a wolf fresh off a brutal hunt. "You are awake," he rasps, his deep voice sounding entirely wrecked. "You are bleeding," Evelyn whispers, against all logic. Her body moves on its own toward this dangerous man. We learn a heartbreaking lesson right here. In moments of pure shock, our empathetic hearts often betray us, falling back into the nurturing habits that ultimately seal our own dark fate. "It is nothing," Dante growls, trying to push past her. Evelyn reacts with surprising speed. "That is not a scratch, it is soaking right through." He freezes in his tracks, his dark eyes blow wide, swimming with the toxic adrenaline of recent violence. "And what do you care?" he snarls, his deep paranoia bleeding out. "You got what you wanted. Leo is safe. Go to sleep." As those bitter words drop, his balance suddenly fails and his massive body sways. Running on pure instinct, Evelyn rushes forward and grabs his good arm. The ruthless boss violently flinches, his muscles locking like solid steel beneath her hands, but he actually allows the touch. "Sit down," she orders. Listen closely to this lesson. Compassion is a dangerous armor. When we instinctively rush to heal a broken monster, we forget to protect ourselves. Let us pause right here, you and I, because this standoff is electric. Evelyn calmly explains she changed her brother's dressings for 2 years. Proving scans her face like a hawk. Dante scans her face like a hawk, searching for deception, but finds only concern. Defeated by blood loss, he drops onto the mattress, hiding a wince. Evelyn grabs the medical kit and bravely kneels right between his knees. She warns him it will sting, peeling back the brutally jagged wound. She pours the burning antiseptic over torn flesh. Yet Dante does not even flinch. He simply locks those dark, obsessive eyes entirely on her face. It leaves us with a haunting truth. The deepest wounds a person carries are rarely the physical ones bleeding out, but the invisible scars hiding behind a cold, empty stare. You and I are going to unpack this dark story together. Just look at how he watches her in the dim light. His constant paranoia is totally gone, replaced by a twisted fascination. He knows anyone else would leave him to bleed out. Evelyn refuses to meet his gaze. She keeps her voice icy, telling him she simply does not want his blood, ruining her expensive silk sheets. That savage response pulls a rough, heavy laugh from the kingpin. It is a rare crack in his terrifying armor. But the second she tries to step away, his hand lashes out, locking around her wrist like a steel trap. It brings us to a quiet truth we all must learn in this life. Showing mercy to a wild beast will never tame it. It only teaches the monster exactly how much it hungers for your warmth. You can almost feel the oxygen vanishing from the room. Evelyn has no boundaries left to hide behind. The boss pulls her flush against his chest, trapping her so tightly she feels the feverish heat radiating off his skin. He calls her a strange creature, pressing his thumb against her racing pulse to feel her terror in real time. She panics, whispering she is only following their contract. But Dante makes a truly dark move. He drops his gaze to her trembling lips, scrambling her mind, and lowers his voice to a lethal whisper. He asks if she knows why they are locked in this room tonight. It reveals a chilling reality we all must face eventually. The monsters we try so desperately to escape are sometimes the exact same walls, shielding us from a much darker evil. This is where the floor falls out from under us. He whispers that there is a traitor in their midst. Someone inside leaked their exact coordinates. A violent shiver rips right through Evelyn. Dante leans in, letting his shadow swallow her completely. Right now, he cannot even trust his own guards. He rises to his terrifying height, telling her she is the only person he knows is clean. Why? Because she despises his dark world, and he holds the ultimate leverage over her brother. He snaps off the lamp, plunging them into darkness, lit only by the dying red embers of the fireplace. It highlights a terrifying truth of the human heart. The strongest cages are never built of iron bars, but from the desperate, reckless love we hold for our own family. Then his voice drops low, ordering her into the bed. Pure panic flashes across her face. She tries to use their agreement as a shield, but he shuts that down. The contract says she follows his orders. Dante strips his ruined shirt, the firelight catching a chest completely covered in violent scars. He mutters that he needs sleep, and if an assassin breaches the room, he must know exactly where she is. He drops onto the mattress, sliding a heavy pistol under his pillow, like it is perfectly normal. He swears he will not hurt her, but she has to stay close as his alibi. She stands frozen, totally trapped in his dark gravity. It proves a bitter reality we all face. Sometimes survival force us to surrender our control to the exact same storm we are bitter trying to outrun. Picture this scene with me, because the tragedy here is so vivid. We are watching a slow burn mirroring the dark history of his bloodline. Dante is operating on that exact same twisted frequency. The silence stretches as it hits Evelyn that the true danger is breathing heavily right next to her spine. Or she lies there rigid, practically fighting off her own mind in the dark. The monster whispers a casual good night, and she remains dead silent. But here is the agonizing secret she does not know. Out in the hallway, a shadow is already creeping up to their door. The traitor is inside the house. Dante just started a lethal game, and she is nothing but bait. It leaves us with an unsettling lesson. The most devastating betrayals always happen right under our own roofs. As the night deepens, you and I are on the edge of our seats, waiting to see who breaks first. The human mind is fragile when locked in a room with pure terror. Evelyn is teetering on the sharp edge of emotional collapse. Will she hold on to her fading sanity, or will this trauma bond wipe out her survival instincts? If you feel the weight of this dark drama, stay with me as we unravel the rest of the story. We are heading straight into the next painful phase of his manipulation. The shadows are moving, the traitor is closing in, and this incoming crash will be massive. Is he actually protecting her, or is she simply a human shield? It leaves us with one haunting thought. Sometimes, the very people who swear to keep us safe are exactly the ones we need saving from the most.